We all secretly want that movie montage transformation, like the exact cinematic sequence I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, the one with the swelling music.
Exactly. The music swells, you violently sweep all the junk food off your counter right into the trash, you buy this pristine leather-bound planner, you go for a run in the pouring rain, and then instantly your entire life is just fixed.
Right. It's magically solved in 3 minutes of screen time.
Yeah. We're just so obsessed with this idea that self-improvement has to be this loud, visible, heroic event.
I mean, it is incredibly seductive, to believe that change is just one burst of dramatic effort away. But when you strip away the Hollywood narrative and look at the brutal mathematical reality of how human behavior actually changes.
The montage stops playing.
Exactly. The montage abruptly stops, and you are just left staring at a landscape of daily existence that is profoundly, almost painfully mundane.
Man, that quiet, grueling reality is exactly where we are heading today. We are doing a deep dive into a piece of source material that strips away all that cinematic magic.
Which is so refreshing to see, honestly.
It really is. It's a ruthless, highly condensed blueprint titled How I Fixed My Life in 6 Months, The Complete Blueprint. And our mission today is to dissect this specific 4-step system.
Right. We want to unpack the advanced psychological and neurobiological shifts it actually demands.
Exactly. And figure out how someone genuinely rebuilds their baseline from scratch. Okay, let's unpack this. Because the narrator doesn't start from a place of triumph.
Not at all.
They start in that exact state of quiet desperation so many of you listening might recognize right now. The text explicitly says, 6 months ago, I was stuck.
And they describe waking up exhausted,
Yeah.
endlessly scrolling through their phone.
Yeah, possessing massive dreams, but absolutely zero discipline. And then they hit this realization that their life is literally slipping through their fingers.
And that realization is the mandatory ignition sequence for this entire protocol. I mean, the source is describing the psychological phenomenon of a breaking point.
But we need to define what that actually means, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not just having a bad Tuesday.
No, definitely not. The narrator experiences a very specific, terrifying mathematical calculation. It's the sudden understanding that if they do not aggressively change their trajectory, the next 5 years of their life are going to mirror the exact same mediocrity of the last 5 years.
The sheer terror of that timeline stretching out in front of you.
It's massive, and it is the single most effective catalyst for human change because from an evolutionary biology standpoint, we are incredibly resilient when it comes to tolerating our own misery.
Wait, really? We're resilient to misery?
Oh, absolutely. The human brain is basically a prediction machine optimized for energy conservation. It loves the known, even if the known is terrible.
Wow.
Yeah, even if your known baseline is waking up fatigued, feeling totally hollow, and doom scrolling for 3 hours, your brain prefers it because it's predictable. It requires zero novel energy expenditure.
So we will just endure decades of quiet suffering simply because the neural pathways for that suffering are already well paved.
Precisely. It's the ultimate evolutionary trap.
We are biologically wired to prefer predictable misery over unpredictable effort. That is wild.
Right. The amygdala, which is your brain's threat detection center, it registers unpredictable effort as a literal survival risk.
Okay, so how does the breaking point override that?
Well, the breaking point occurs when you suddenly project your current trajectory into the future. You zoom out and realize this predictable misery isn't just ruining today, it's going to ruin your next 1,800 days. Suddenly, the terror of long-term stagnation completely overrides the immediate comfort of the bad habit. The brain finally registers your current lifestyle as the actual existential threat.
So without the heat of that specific realization, the discipline required for this 6-month blueprint simply cannot be forged.
Exactly. You need the fire.
Think about it like being a passenger in a car driving slowly toward a cliff.
Yeah.
You can see the edge. You know exactly where the vehicle is heading.
Right.
But for miles, you just sit there in the passenger seat, maybe adjusting the radio, complaining about the suspension.
Just letting it happen.
Yeah. And the absolute hardest part of the entire journey isn't the act of driving the car to safety. The hardest part is the sheer vulnerability and effort required to unbuckle your seatbelt, climb over the center console, and violently wrestle the steering wheel away from your own worst impulses.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Like wrestling that wheel away means you are stripping yourself of the illusion that your big dreams are just going to passively happen to you.
Because dreaming is safe.
Very safe. Imagining success while lying in bed costs 0 calories, but actually executing a plan risks failure, which threatens your ego. So you stay in the passenger seat until the sight of the cliff forces you to move.
So you finally snapped. You've climbed over the console, you've grabbed the wheel, and you are ready to change.
But you can't just slam on the gas pedal.
No, because the moment you take the wheel, you realize your windshield is caked in an inch of mud. You have absolutely no visibility. Your attention span is fractured, your cognitive load is maxed out, and you just can't focus on the road ahead.
Which means you have to clean the glass before you can drive.
Exactly. Which brings us directly to the first major intervention in the text. Step 1, the digital reset.
Right, because you cannot build a new life with a fractured mind. The source identifies the absolute obliteration of our modern attention span as public enemy number 1.
The blueprint states very bluntly, the first thing I had to fix was my focus. It introduces the reality of the attention economy, explicitly stating that social media is designed to keep us distracted.
And the narrator uses a very deliberate word there. They say, I was a victim of it.
Which completely shifts the paradigm, doesn't it?
It really does. We often talk about our phone usage as a personal failing, like, oh, I have a bad habit of checking Instagram.
Right, like it's a lack of willpower.
Exactly. But the text argues you need to reframe this. You are actively participating in a highly sophisticated extraction system. The attention economy operates on the literal premise that your focus is a finite, highly valuable, tradable commodity.
Wow.
Yeah, these platforms are not neutral communication tools. They are billion-dollar extraction engines designed by behavioral engineers.
So when the text says these platforms are designed to keep us distracted, we aren't talking about a metaphor. We're talking about weaponized psychology.
Oh, 100%. We are talking about variable ratio schedules of reinforcement. It is the exact same psychological architecture used in casino slot machines.
The slot machine effect.
Exactly. When you pull to refresh your feed, you don't know if you're going to get a reward, a like, a funny video, a piece of outrage, or nothing at all.
And that uncertainty is what hooks you.
Yes. That intermittent unpredictability spikes your dopamine levels infinitely higher than a guaranteed reward would. Your brain is hacked to keep pulling the lever. You are basically bringing Paleolithic evolutionary hardware to a fight against algorithmic supercomputers.
And you will lose that fight every single time if you try to rely on sheer willpower.
You don't stand a chance.
Which is why the blueprint solution is so extreme. I mean, it doesn't suggest using the screen time app or putting your phone in grayscale.
No, it mandates a scorched earth digital detox.
Delete all apps that do not facilitate personal growth. Turn off every single notification with the sole exception of direct phone calls.
It is a complete severance, and the psychological payoff described in the text is instantaneous and profound.
The narrator says their brain felt quiet for the first time in years.
We need to pause and seriously consider what a quiet brain actually means from a neurobiological perspective.
Because just imagine that baseline for a second. Most of you listening probably haven't experienced a genuinely quiet brain since, 2008?
Easily. Because for years, you have been enduring a relentless, invisible cognitive tax. Every ping, every hectic buzz, every red badge on an app icon is a micro-demand on your prefrontal cortex.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It is. Each notification triggers a tiny spike of cortisol, a stress hormone, preparing your body to react to a potential threat or a social demand.
So when you delete the apps and kill the notifications,
You aren't just saving 2 hours of your day. You are reclaiming your neurochemistry. You are stopping the chronic cortisol drip and allowing your nervous system to return to a baseline state of calm.
the source hits us with this incredibly sharp observation during this step. It says, you don't realize how much potential you have until you stop giving your attention to people who don't care about you.
I mean, it is a phenomenal critique of modern parasocial relationships.
Unpack that a bit.
Well, anthropologically, humans are designed to maintain a very limited number of social connections. This is known as Dunbar's number, roughly 150 people.
Right.
We only have so much emotional empathy and cognitive bandwidth to give. But today, we are pouring our deepest emotional energy, our outrage, our validation seeking into following the curated lives of influencers, politicians, or distant acquaintances.
And none of these people know you exist.
None of them. It is a massive asymmetry of investment. You are pouring the absolute highest quality of your cognitive resources into a digital void, just enriching the engagement metrics of strangers.
Meanwhile, your actual tangible life, your physical health, your real-world relationships is starved of that exact same attention.
Totally starved.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about your daily attention as a literal bank account. You wake up every morning with a finite amount of attention dollars.
I like that.
And what this source is pointing out is that by living in the attention economy, you have allowed these platforms to set up invisible, automatic, direct debits from your account.
Oh,
They are
yes.
quietly siphoning your funds while you wait in line for coffee, while you sit in traffic, while you're in the bathroom. And then you wonder why, at 6 p.m., when it's finally time to work on your own big dreams, your account is totally overdrawn.
You have absolutely no attention capital left to invest in yourself.
Exactly.
That's the brutal reality. You bankrupt your own potential to fund a stranger's algorithm.
Okay, but let me push back on this scorched earth approach for a second. Deleting everything that doesn't facilitate personal growth. Turning off all notifications except phone calls.
Yeah, it's intense.
If I do that, I'm going to miss out on the group chat organizing my best friend's birthday dinner. I'm going to miss the Slack message from my coworker. I mean, is completely cutting yourself off from the modern digital grid actually a sustainable way to live? Or is the source just promoting digital martyrdom?
We have to evaluate this within the context of the blueprint. This text isn't a guide for maintaining a perfectly balanced, optimized life.
It's an intervention.
Exactly. It is an emergency intervention for a life that is actively failing. In an emergency room, a surgeon doesn't worry about a minor paper cut when the patient is hemorrhaging from an artery.
Right.
Right now, your attention span is bleeding out. Is this protocol a massive shock to the system? Yes. But you cannot incrementally taper off a behavioral addiction that has fundamentally rewired your dopamine pathways.
You just have to rip the Band-Aid off.
You have to break the circuit entirely. If the temporary cost of saving the next 5 years of your life is missing a casual dinner party because you weren't in the group chat, that is a profoundly cheap price to pay.
That puts it in perspective.
Yeah.
You have to apply the tourniquet to stop the bleeding.
Yes.
So, the tourniquet is on, the phone is silenced,
Yeah.
the mud is off the windshield, which brings up an immediate, deeply uncomfortable reality.
The next morning.
Yes, the next morning. You wake up, you don't have a phone to grab, and you are suddenly staring into a terrifying void of your own existence. Your brain is desperate to fill that newly cleared territory with noise.
It craves the input.
So how do you defend that quiet space before the old habits rush back in?
This is the exact vulnerability the blueprint addresses next. Nature abhors a vacuum. If you remove the digital noise but fail to intentionally build structure in its place, the chaos will inevitably flood back in.
You have to physically and psychologically claim the territory you just cleared.
Starting from the very first second you open your eyes.
The source labels this phase winning the morning, and it starts with a stark warning about the morning scroll trap. The narrator says, "I used to wake up and immediately check my phone. That's a trap."
And this introduces one of the most powerful psychological frameworks in the entire text. It argues that checking your phone puts your brain in reaction mode instead of creation mode.
Let's talk about reaction mode versus creation mode.
This distinction is just a masterclass in applied neuroscience. When you wake up, your brain is transitioning out of the sleep cycle. You are moving from slow delta and theta brainwaves into the faster alpha and beta waves of waking consciousness.
You're booting up.
Exactly. And this transition period is accompanied by the cortisol awakening response, which is a natural spike in alertness. During this very brief window, your brain is highly plastic and highly impressionable. It is a completely clean slate.
And what happens when the very first thing you do is reach for the glowing rectangle on your nightstand?
You instantly obliterate that clean slate. By opening an inbox, checking a news feed, or swiping through social media, you are immediately subjecting your fresh, highly impressionable brain to the demands, emergencies, and emotional volatility of the rest of the world.
You see an email from your boss.
Right, a frustrating email. You see a terrifying global news headline. You look at an influencer's fabricated perfect morning and feel an instant spike of inadequacy.
And before your feet have even touched the physical floor of your bedroom, your emotional state and your cognitive focus have been completely hijacked by external forces.
You are purely reacting. You have surrendered the steering wheel within seconds of waking up. Reaction mode means your entire day will now be spent playing defense against everyone else's priorities.
Wow.
Whereas creation mode means you build a fortress around that neuroplastic window. You dictate the terms of the day. You are the initiator, not the responder.
It is literally like leaving your front door wide open while you sleep and letting 100 strangers walk right into your bedroom.
That's exactly what it is.
Before you've even had a chance to stretch or brush your teeth or drink a glass of water, these strangers are standing over your bed shouting at you. Look at this tragedy. Reply to this request. Buy this supplement.
It is a completely insane, deeply traumatic way to begin the human day.
It really is a daily, self-inflicted psychological trauma, which is why the blueprint prescribes a highly structured, unyielding antidote.
Step 2.
Step 2. It declares the first hour of the day entirely sacred. No phone, zero distractions. And it allocates this hour into a strict 10-20-30 split. 10 minutes of planning, 20 minutes of movement, and 30 minutes of learning.
Let's break down the specific biology of that 10-20-30 sequence, because people might wonder, why not just meditate for an hour?
Yeah, why this specific split?
The sequence is meticulously designed to activate different physiological and cognitive systems. The first 10 minutes of planning engages your prefrontal cortex, the executive functioning center of your brain.
Getting organized.
Right. By writing down your intentions and prioritizing tasks, you are forcing your brain out of passive observation and into active architecture. You are signaling to your nervous system, I am in control of the next 16 hours.
Then you immediately transition into 20 minutes of moving the body.
Right. And this is not about training for an Ironman triathlon. It is purely about physiological activation. Intense movement increases blood flow to the brain and triggers the release of BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
BDNF, I've heard of this.
Yeah, think of BDNF as fertilizer for your neural pathways. It primes the brain to absorb new information and adapt to stress. You are physically signaling to your endocrine system that the dormant period is over.
Which perfectly sets up the final 30 minutes of the hour. Learning.
Yeah, exactly. Your brain is now awake, flooded with oxygen and BDNF, and completely free of external stress. You use this peak biological state for cognitive priming.
Reading a dense book, studying a concept.
Yes. You feed your brain high-quality, intentional information before it ever encounters the chaotic, low-quality junk food of the outside world. This routine builds an impenetrable defensive shield against the reactionary demands of modern life.
Now, what I find incredibly refreshing about this source material is how it actively dismantles the toxic hustle culture myth of the early riser.
Oh, thank goodness.
It provides this massive caveat. It says, it's not about waking up at 4 a.m. It's about what you do when you actually wake up. Because there is this whole industry online that fetishizes the 4 a.m. alarm, treating sleep deprivation as a badge of honor.
Which is a fundamental misunderstanding of human performance. The hour of the day you wake up is largely arbitrary. It is often dictated by your chronotype and your sleep needs.
Right.
The magic of the morning routine is not the hour on the clock. The magic is the autonomy. Waking up at 4 a.m. just to doom scroll on TikTok in the dark yields zero benefit over waking up at 8 a.m. and doing the routine.
So controlling your life is about controlling the sequence of your actions upon waking, regardless of when that happens.
Exactly.
But let's look at the reality of implementing this.
Yeah.
We're operating in a world that demands absolute instantaneous availability. If I am an employee with a demanding boss or a parent with young kids, the world expects me to be plugged in the second I open my eyes. Setting a boundary that says, do not disturb, I am doing my 30 minutes of cognitive priming, sounds like a luxury reserved for single people with no responsibilities. How do you defend that hour when urgency is the currency of the world?
It is brutally difficult. I'm not going to pretend it's easy. But you have to recognize a deeply uncomfortable truth. The world's urgency is almost exclusively about someone else's priorities.
Wow. Yeah.
The emails sitting in your inbox are a literal list of other people's agendas for your life. If you do not ruthlessly, aggressively protect that first hour for your own agenda, your entire existence will evaporate into a series of reactions to other people's needs.
It feels incredibly selfish at first.
It does. But this is the classic oxygen mask principle on an airplane. You cannot be a highly effective employee or a deeply present parent if your baseline cognitive state is fractured, reactionary, and depleted.
You have to secure your own psychology first in order to be genuinely useful to anyone else later. So you have secured the morning. You've planned, you've moved, and you've spent 30 minutes feeding your brain high-quality information. You are primed.
Ready to go.
But priming isn't producing.
Yeah.
Once you have established this pristine creation mode, the natural consequence is that you actually have to start building something.
Yes, the preparation has to translate into tangible output. This introduces the third pillar of the blueprint, the consumer-to-creator pipeline.
The skill phase.
Right. And the text opens the segment by pointing out a devastating psychological illusion. The narrator says, I realize that watching videos about success isn't the same as being successful.
It sounds so incredibly obvious when you say it out loud, but it is the exact trap millions of people are stuck in.
What's fascinating here is the mechanism of productive procrastination, because it is a brilliant trick your biology plays on you.
A trick?
Yes. Your brain is a dopamine-seeking missile. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter responsible for motivation and reward. Now, when you actually sit down to do hard, meaningful, work like debugging lines of code or staring at a blank page to write a book, The work is deeply frustrating.
Oh, no.
It involves immense cognitive friction. The dopamine reward is significantly delayed, often months or years in the future.
But when you sit on your couch and watch a beautifully edited, fast-paced documentary about someone else building a massive company.
Your brain is essentially hacked. Humans possess mirror neurons. When you watch someone else achieve a goal or demonstrate high status on screen, those mirror neurons fire.
You simulate the experience.
Exactly. Your brain chemically simulates the experience of that success. You get a massive immediate rush of dopamine and inspiration. Your body is tricked into experiencing the neurochemical reward of having accomplished hard labor without you having endured a single ounce of the actual friction.
You literally biohack yourself into feeling productive while sitting completely motionless.
Right. It's just this total illusion of progress, right? You feel so incredibly motivated by the video that you decide the most logical next step is to
Watch another video.
watch another video. You become a professional, highly educated consumer of self-improvement rather than a practitioner of it. You are gorging on the feeling of success without ever planting the seeds.
The absolute irony of this blueprint is that the author is using a highly engaging piece of content about success to beg the audience to stop consuming content about success.
It is deeply ironic.
It's like buying 20 different cookbooks, reading them cover to cover, highlighting the recipes, watching every culinary masterclass online, and feeling like an elite chef, despite the fact that you have never physically picked up a knife to chop a single onion.
You have all the theory, but you are still going to starve.
Exactly. So the blueprint recognizes this trap and enforces a strict structural mandate to force you out of it.
The 2-hour mandate.
Yes. It requires you to pick one single high-value skill. The text suggests coding, editing, or writing, and you must dedicate exactly 2 hours to practicing it every single day. No exceptions, no excuses.
Notice the specific parameters there. It doesn't say grind for 14 hours a day. It asks for 2 hours.
Why 2 hours?
2 hours is a very deliberate window. It completely eliminates the universal excuse of I don't have enough time. If you have successfully executed Step 1 and eliminated your screen time, you have absolutely reclaimed 2 hours of your day.
That's true.
But biologically, 2 hours is also the exact amount of time required to push past initial resistance, enter a state of deep work or flow, and achieve the intense focus necessary for neuroplasticity to actually occur.
Let's talk about that neuroplasticity, because the blueprint makes a massive claim here. It states that 6 months of this focused daily work will put you years ahead of people who just wish for success. How does 2 hours a day for 6 months mathematically equal years of advantage?
Because skill acquisition is not linear. It operates on the mathematics of compound interest. When you practice a complex skill like coding with deep focus, you are physically insulating the neural circuits in your brain with a substance called myelin.
Myelin.
The thicker the myelin sheath, the faster and more effortlessly the electrical signals travel. If you practice for 2 hours every single day, you are continuously layering that myelin. You are building permanent neurological infrastructure that makes tomorrow's learning exponentially faster than today's.
Whereas the person who only practices when they feel inspired.
The inspired amateur might practice for 5 hours on a Sunday and then not touch the skill for 3 weeks.
And what happens to the brain then?
They never achieve that compounding myelination. The neural pathways degrade between sessions. They are constantly starting from scratch, fighting the exact same initial friction every single time they sit down.
Ah, I see.
So 6 unbroken months of daily compounding neurological adaptation will absolutely obliterate a decade of sporadic, uncommitted wishing.
But wait, why does the blueprint insist so aggressively on picking just one high-value skill?
I feel like the modern ethos is all about the multi-hyphenate. People want to build an app while starting a dropshipping business, while learning conversational French, while launching a podcast. Isn't diversifying your skills the smart play?
Diversification is for financial portfolios, not for early-stage skill acquisition.
Ouch. Good point.
If you spread your 2 hours of daily cognitive bandwidth across 4 different domains, you guarantee that you will remain mediocre at all of them, especially within a compressed 6-month timeline. The goal of this phase isn't just to learn a little bit. The goal is to cross the threshold of proficiency.
Why is that threshold so important?
Because crossing from amateur to proficient is the moment the psychological dynamic flips. In the beginning, the skill is pure friction. But once you get genuinely good at it, once you can write a clean script or compile a working piece of software, the motivation becomes intrinsic.
You actually enjoy doing it. Right. The work itself generates the dopamine. You no longer need to watch a YouTube video to feel productive because building your own reality has become vastly more rewarding than watching someone else's. But you cannot reach that intrinsic tipping point if your focus is fractured across multiple hobbies.
So you're off the digital grid. Your mornings are bulletproof. You are aggressively myelinating your brain for 2 hours a day on a single skill. You are undeniably transforming.
You're a new person.
But here's where the friction hits. As you spend months executing this discipline and literally becoming a new biological and psychological entity, you inevitably start outgrowing your old life. The puzzle pieces of your existence no longer fit together.
Which brings us to the final step.
Yes. Step 4, protecting your ecosystem. And this is undoubtedly the most socially painful step in the blueprint.
The text introduces this phase with an assertion that hits like a freight train. It says, you cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick.
That is a profoundly heavy statement. It sounds like something you would hear in a substance abuse recovery center, not a productivity blueprint.
The stakes are different, but the underlying behavioral psychology is identical. Human behavior is overwhelmingly context-dependent. We like to think of ourselves as independent agents driven purely by willpower. But the truth is, we are fundamentally shaped by the physical spaces we inhabit and the social circles we maintain.
Your environment is a web of physical and social triggers.
Exactly.
So if you are trying to build this new 6-month life, but your environment hasn't changed,
you are fighting a completely unwinnable war on two fronts. You are already expending massive amounts of energy fighting your own internal resistance to learn this new skill. If your external environment is also filled with cues that trigger your old, comfortable habits, if your friends constantly complain about their lives but refuse to act.
or if they mock your new discipline.
Right. Or if your physical space is chaotic, your new, fragile identity will simply be crushed under the gravitational pull of your surroundings. Willpower is a finite resource. You will eventually run out, and the environment will win.
To combat this, the blueprint demands a brutal audit of your circle. It says, stop hanging out with people who have no ambition. And it suggests replacing them by listening to podcasts and reading books from people you actually admire.
This is the operationalization of the old adage that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. We understand this through the lens of social contagion.
Social contagion.
Like a virus. Exactly like a virus. Emotions, behaviors, and norms spread through social networks. Ambition is highly contagious. When you surround yourself with disciplined people, risk-taking and deep work become the normalized baseline. But apathy, cynicism, and victimhood are equally, if not more, contagious.
And the text uses a brilliant metaphor here to describe that contagion. It says your environment is either a wind in your sails or an anchor holding you back. There is no neutral ground.
That is the most crucial insight of this entire section. We often mistakenly view our environment as a passive backdrop, a neutral stage where we perform the play of our lives.
But it's not.
The blueprint completely rejects that. It insists that every single element of your physical and social ecosystem is an active, dynamic force. Every conversation, every room, every friend is actively pushing you closer to your goal or physically dragging you back down to your baseline.
But the emotional reality of executing this step is incredibly complex. I mean, we aren't just talking about changing the coffee shop you work in. We are talking about curating the actual voices you allow into your head.
And sometimes those voices belong to friends you've known since middle school.
It makes me think of someone trying to quit eating sugar while working full-time in a candy shop. You can read all the literature on metabolic health, you can have ironclad willpower, but if you are constantly surrounded by the smell of caramel, and your coworkers are constantly handing you free samples,
You are going to break.
you're going to break. The environmental cues simply overwhelm the prefrontal cortex over time.
That's just biology.
But wait, let's look at the morality of this advice.
Yeah.
The instruction to just cut people off because they lack ambition sounds incredibly cold, almost sociopathic. What happened to loyalty? What happened to pulling your friends up with you? Are we really supposed to just abandon our social history the second we decide to learn how to code?
It is an agonizing tension, and it runs counter to a lot of our social conditioning. But if we analyze this strictly through the premise of the text, that the old environment is fundamentally sick, we have to look at the objective mechanics of change.
Okay, later.
The blueprint doesn't necessarily dictate that you send a dramatic text declaring, "You lack ambition, you are dead to me." It dictates a radical, unapologetic reallocation of your time.
Because your time is your only asset.
Exactly. If you only have 2 hours of free time a day to build your escape velocity and you spend it sitting at a bar with an anchor, someone who normalizes your stagnation, you will not move. As for the idea of pulling them up with you,
Yeah, what about that?
that is a noble sentiment. But functionally, you cannot save someone from drowning if you do not yet know how to swim yourself.
That's a great way to put it.
During this 6-month intensive phase, your new identity is far too fragile to act as a life raft for someone else's apathy. If a friend has settled for predictable misery, your sudden attempts to grow will actually make them profoundly uncomfortable.
Oh, because it highlights their inaction.
Yes. Subconsciously, they will try to pull you back down because your growth is a mirror reflecting their stagnation. You have to secure your own position first. Paradoxically, the most compassionate thing you can do for an unambitious friend is to ruthlessly succeed and become living proof that change is possible. But you cannot do that while they are holding you underwater.
You have to ruthlessly curate your inputs to change your outputs. And the blueprint offers a brilliant alternative if you find yourself physically isolated. If there is no one in your current zip code who shares your ambition, you can curate a synthetic environment.
The synthetic environment, I love that term.
You can spend hours every day with the greatest minds in human history simply by reading their books or listening to long-form interviews. You can literally borrow the ambition of dead philosophers and modern innovators until your own internal engine is strong enough to run on its own.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, cutting out old friends, sitting alone in a quiet room for 2 hours a day, refusing to look at a phone, meticulously trapping a morning routine, we have to acknowledge the reality of this blueprint.
It's not glamorous.
None of these activities are glamorous. They are deeply lonely. They are incredibly tedious.
So what does this all mean? This perfectly brings us to the final synthesis of this text. The blueprint concludes by gathering all these intense, isolated steps into a profound central thesis about the nature of growth.
The anti-montage thesis.
Exactly. The source explicitly targets that cinematic movie montage we talked about at the very beginning. The narrator states, look, fixing your life isn't about one big event. It's about small, boring decisions made every single day for 6 months.
That phrase, small, boring decisions, is the absolute bedrock truth of human transformation. Real change is not a firework display. Real change is laying a brick.
Laying a brick.
It is the microscopic decision to drink a glass of water instead of a soda at 2 p.m. It is the decision to open a textbook instead of opening Netflix at 8 p.m. It is the decision to actually pull the covers back and stand up when the alarm rings instead of negotiating with yourself in the dark.
And individually, isolated in the moment, every single one of these decisions is entirely unremarkable. They're excruciatingly boring.
Exactly.
There is no audience for those decisions. Nobody claps for you when you lay a single brick on a rainy Tuesday morning. You don't get a trophy. You don't get a surge of social media validation. It's just you, alone, staring at a brick and some wet mortar.
No one sees it happening.
Right. The world only applauds 6 months later when they happen to walk by and see a fully constructed house. And they look at you and say, wow, how did you build that house so fast? What's your secret? And you're standing there thinking, fast. I have been staring at mud and making agonizingly boring decisions in silence for half a year.
The disconnect between the invisible process and the visible result is massive.
But how do we actually learn to tolerate, let alone fall in love with, the sheer boredom of that process? Because as we establish, our modern dopamine-fried brains absolutely reject boredom.
You survive the boredom by fundamentally shifting your dopaminergic time horizon.
Break that down for us.
When you are trapped in the attention economy, your time horizon for reward is about 3 seconds long, the exact length of a short-form video. Your brain demands immediate payout. When you embrace this 6-month blueprint, you are forcing your brain to stretch its time horizon.
You're delaying the gratification.
You actively stop looking for the immediate thrill of the single brick, and you train your brain to derive deep, quiet satisfaction from the structural integrity of the wall you are building. You stop relying on motivation, which is an emotional spike, and you start relying on the cold, hard mathematics of compounding effort.
And speaking of those mathematics, the source makes a brilliant final distinction regarding our ultimate excuse. It says, you don't need more time, you need more focus.
Man, this single sentence completely dismantles the universal alibi. The most common phrase in the modern world is, I don't have time to fix my life.
We hear it all the time.
But mathematically, physically, we all occupy the exact same 24-hour rotation of the Earth. The defining metric of success is not the sheer volume of time available, but the density of your focus within that time.
The density of focus.
Yes. 2 hours of undivided, undistracted, high-intensity focus on a single skill produces exponentially more value than 10 hours of fragmented, multitasking, notification-interrupted pseudo-work.
The entire 6-month blueprint is basically an exercise in aggressively reclaiming your stolen focus through the digital reset and then narrowing that focus into a laser beam directed at a single outcome.
That's exactly it.
And then the blueprint delivers its final, unyielding mandate. It doesn't suggest that you think about this. It issues a strict call to action regarding the timeline. It forbids you from delaying. It says, start today, not Monday, not next month, today.
We have to unpack why the source specifically attacks the concept of Monday, because the Monday phenomenon is one of the most insidious psychological traps we fall into.
Is the trap of the fresh start effect. We are all guilty of it.
Oh, totally. The human brain absolutely loves to schedule self-improvement for a symbolically clean future date, a Monday, the first of the month, or New Year's Day. Psychologically, this is a fatal error.
Why is it an error?
When you tell yourself, I am going to start my massive life overhaul on Monday, your brain actually rewards you with a premature dose of dopamine. You feel a surge of pride and relief just for making the decision to be better in the imaginary future.
And the darkest part is what that dopamine hit allows you to do in the present.
Exactly. It provides you with a biological free pass to completely indulge your worst habits today without any guilt. You gorge on junk food, you scroll for 10 hours, you ignore your responsibilities all weekend because Monday is the fresh start.
The future version of you is going to handle the discipline, so the present version of you gets to run wild.
Right. So waiting for Monday isn't actually a scheduling strategy. It is literally just a sophisticated psychological defense mechanism to protect today's bad habits.
It is a delay tactic disguised as a strategic plan. And the blueprint identifies this loophole and violently closes it.
Closes it right up.
By demanding that you start today, it forces you to confront the visceral discomfort of change right now in the messy, imperfect reality of a random Thursday afternoon. It strips away the fantasy of the clean slate.
Because neurobiologically and philosophically, the future does not exist. Your life is only ever lived in the immediate present.
Monday is an illusion. Next month is an illusion. There is only right now. If you do not possess the capacity to make the small, boring decision today, the mathematics dictate that you will not magically possess it on Monday.
That is the ultimate reality check.
It perfectly encapsulates the ruthless pragmatism of this entire 4-step journey. We have traversed an intense landscape today. This 6-month blueprint demands that you silence the billion-dollar digital noise to starve the attention economy.
Step 1.
It requires you to build a fortress around your morning, engaging in planning, movement, and cognitive priming before the world can hijack your neurochemistry.
Step 2.
It forces you to cross the painful chasm from passive consumer to active creator by dedicating 2 relentless hours a day to myelinating a single high-value skill.
Step 3.
And finally, it demands that you fiercely protect your new ecosystem by cutting away the anchors and finding the wind.
It is an incredibly simple framework. But simple is never the same thing as easy. Executing this blueprint requires the complete systematic dismantling of your current comfort zone.
The original text ends with a direct request to its audience. It says, leave a comment below saying, I'm starting today, so I know who is serious. Now, obviously, you can't leave a comment on this audio, but I will suggest that you, the listener, physically make that commitment to yourself in this exact moment.
Say it out loud.
Say it out loud in your car, write it on a sticky note and put it on your monitor. That commitment isn't for us. It is a binding contract with the person you are biologically and psychologically capable of becoming 6 months from right now.
And as you sit with that decision, I want to leave you with one final inverse thought. We have spent this entire deep dive analyzing how the source proves that 6 months of focused, boring decisions can completely and mathematically rebuild a human life.
Right.
It is proven. It is possible. But if that compounding math is true for positive change, you have to ask yourself a terrifying question about the alternative. What kind of life are you accidentally building right this second with the thousands of small, unfocused, distracted decisions you are making every single day?
Wow. That is a heavy, necessary mirror to hold up. We started this deep dive talking about the fantasy of the movie montage, that expectation of a loud, glamorous turning point. But the truth is, if you take an X-ray of genuine human transformation, it doesn't show a clean break or a sudden explosion of light. It just shows 1,000 tiny, invisible, boring decisions piling up in the dark day after day until eventually you are entirely unrecognizable. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, the first small, boring decision starts the exact moment this audio stops playing. We'll see you next time.